Giggles podcast. Our standard start. Hands up!
Yeah. All right. Welcome back to another episode, guys. Thank you again for tuning in. We are going to be talking about something that...
hopefully something. We can talk about something.
It'll definitely be something. I'm just really hoping that we don't tangent off into our conspiracy theories.
We might all try and leave that to another episode.
It's going to be so hard not to do in this one. It'll be like we'll start a sentence and then stop it and realise where we were going with that.
But what if...
And it's not conspiracy theories about events in the world. It's about people. And I've said enough.
Dum dum dum.
Da-da. Anyways, our subject today that we are talking about is the importance of strength, and we are going to cover the importance of strength being what we would call an everyday athlete, going to the gym, doing it because you love it, doing it because you want to improve your health and fitness, but you don't have any desire to really compete at a high level, or you just don't have the time, so you're just not bothering with that. And then we're going to talk about the importance of developing strength when you're at a beginner, intermediate, RX and elite athlete level.
So
and
across all different spectrums of athlete, really.
Yeah. And I thought that KPow and I may have different opinions when it comes to the elite athlete side. I don't know anymore after what we've kind of just discussed a little bit, but we will see.
We've got conflicting views on a lot of things, which is
do.
cool. We do, but we don't. Because, we agree on the principles, but then the application seems to be different for pretty much everything.
Absolutely.
It's like, I do it right, and then you do it your way.
Yeah. And then I didn't have knee surgery, and you did.
Whoa. Twice, actually. Hopefully
Twice?
this one's the first time was back in 2014.
Rugby.
Yeah.
Rugby?
Yep.
No, that's just the standard procedure for a rugby player.
Yeah, I know. But then this, I don't even know what happened this time, but we're here, aren't we?
You're trying to keep up with me and my squats.
You got to the squat first. You bastard.
Probably can't do it anymore, though. That's right. Because
I definitely can't do it anymore.
Yet.
So we've tangented off already.
Yep.
So, importance of strength. I guess we'll start with the everyday athlete, the person that's just looking to improve their health and their holistic approach of health and fitness. So I probably have a different view on this to most people, in that I would say I look at strength is one component of the whole picture of fitness, right? And I would say that there's like a sliding scale of, depending on where you are in your athlete journey, it's going to slide higher or lower on the importance scale. If you're an everyday athlete and fitness and the whole picture of fitness is your goal to improve your health as well, I would put less emphasis on strength training. What I'm not saying is that strength training is not important, because it still is very, very important. But if you put it into, go extreme examples, have a strongman athlete, and then you have an endurance-based athlete, so let's say like an Ironman athlete, just in extremes, the Ironman athlete is going to be living a healthier and a longer life than the strongman or the powerlifter. They're at
without
the heights that
anything random coming in.
Yeah,
so we got that one clear.
Yeah, just if they didn't get hit by a bus. But if you were to look at the extremes, one is purely endurance-based and they're not doing any strength training, and the other one is just doing strength training and not doing any endurance-based stuff. The endurance-based athlete is going to be living a healthier life. If you look at the entire systems of the mechanisms that's going on inside your body from the fitness training, the mechanisms that's going on inside your body from the strength training, the athlete that does the endurance-based stuff is going to be living a healthier life and is statistically going to live longer than a strength-based athlete. So if you're looking at it as a holistic health, I want to do this for the rest of my life kind of thing, strength is still very, very important, but it's less important than building a cardiovascular system.
Yep, I would agree with that. I would say that training strength still needs to be a regular thing regardless, but the emphasis that you put on it should kind of, I guess, waver or lean away or for and against it, depending on what your goals are as well. And it's cool that, like if you are an endurance athlete and you're like, I want to get stronger, and you bias towards that for a while, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just don't lose that cardiovascular endurance that you've built up. Like one of the key markers they do for aging now is not just grip and rotation and jumping, it's actually like VO2 max, cardiovascular health. And so if you can have higher markers in that, then it is a dictation of health.
Yeah.
Dictation, measurement, there we go.
Measurement. We'll go with measurement.
Yeah, I've been reading about dictators.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But you want to try and, if the overall health is your goal, then you want to be the most well-rounded athlete as possible, which is where CrossFit comes into it. Because let's go the two extremes again of an everyday athlete. If you've got a 20 kilo back squat, but you can run 10 Ks in 15 minutes, versus someone that has a 100 kilo back squat and can run a 10K in 20 minutes, that person's going to be overall a little bit healthier than or they're going to have better longevity within the sport or within life. So you kind of want to base yourself around building all of the mechanisms of health. So the 10 components of fitness from CrossFit.
Yeah, I agree.
What are the 10 components of fitness, Jono? Let's see if...
Should we see if I can do it? Speed, agility, strength, endurance, coordination, and there's 5 more.
There is 5 more. Oh. We should have done our research.
Yeah, I only just did my level 2 again.
Did ya? I need to do mine. I wanted to do mine.
Yeah, I only just got my certificate last weekend. Like they said that I passed everything. So there we go.
Yeah, right.
And that's it. But I can deliver the 10 components without knowing them. So thanks for that. I appreciate that.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. I'm trying to memorize them now.
All right, well, while you think of that, I'm going to talk more about numbers as well. So some people, you might be like, oh, cool, that's a great idea, but then what numbers should I try and hit? And as a general rule, what I like anyway, and it's just my thoughts, there's no science behind this, it's just an idea of something it's challenging for people to attain, but it's also attainable, and it's not going to break your back, like pun intended, when it comes to deadlifts. So if you're looking at strict press, anywhere from like 75% of your body weight, back squat should be about 100 to 125% of your body weight, and deadlift 150%. I think for me, as general health, is more than enough. Anything more than that, the risk to reward isn't going to be favourable enough for you to keep pushing it. And that's where we start to see people push, because they're doing dick measuring contests in classes and everything like that, and then they're like, oh, my back's hurt. And I'm like, well, you didn't have to go that heavy. It's just because some dude next to you that you're trying to like go back to high school with is lifting heavier than you. They also weigh 20 kilos heavier than you, or they've got 5 years of training volume under them.
So those numbers are like, if you've got those numbers, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
So like, I wouldn't put any more emphasis on building strength if you have those numbers. I would be more looking at like the rest of the picture as far as health is concerned, because you're ticking the boxes with your strength if you're hitting those numbers. If you're aiming, there's nothing wrong with aiming for more either, so let's make that clear. Like if you say, nah, I want to hit a double body weight back squat, and as long as there's like no movement inefficiencies and you're in no harm of injuring yourself chasing those goals, then go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. But if your overall goal is health and longevity, then hitting those numbers that you just said before, you've ticked that box with strength. What's another component that can make me a well-rounded athlete?
Yeah, because then you can focus on gymnastics, you can focus on running, rowing, swimming. You can focus on just having fun with the strength that you've built, and developing technique.
Yeah, that's the thing that kind of keeps people doing CrossFit is the variety in it. So if you just focus on doing those 3 lifts, or if you're just focusing on a very small component of the CrossFit and you're missing the whole picture, I don't think you're not gonna have as much fun for as long if you narrow your sights into a couple of things.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Next athlete.
Yes, so now let's just say you wanted to get into competition, you're looking at beginners stuff and everything like that. What I really like, and what makes it, I guess, less unknown though within the sport of CrossFit, is that CrossFit kind of tells you what you need to have.
Yeah.
Like, coming into the open, you need to have the strength as a male to cycle or be able to cycle a 43 kilo barbell. That is the minimum. And for the females, it's a 29 kilo barbell minimum that you can cycle. You can actually do reps at continuously with good technique. Yeah. We know that when you get to what we would say in the open as a moderate weight, moderate to lightweight, I would say now these days is 61 kilos for males and 43 kilos for females, and that's still something you need to be able to cycle. Obviously not as fast as the lighter weight. And then we can go up to the 84 kilos and the 50, is it 50?
53.
I think it's 57. 55 kilos we'll go with.
Yeah. Around
yeah. And then we obviously go up to the 102 kilos, the 70 kilos and all that stuff.
Yeah. But then that kind of just depends on what level of athlete you are currently and where you're trying to get to as well. So there's a big jump between the open and quarterfinals. So quarterfinals, we saw a 124 kilo bar that you needed to cycle for. It wasn't a massive amount of reps, but you needed to be able to hit repetitions at 124 kilos for your clean and jerk. And then at the top end, you needed to be able to cycle a 100 kilo barbell for snatches.
Yeah.
So that's at the entry level, I would say, of elite athlete. But if you're at an intermediate level, being able to cycle that 60 kilo bar that should be your goal there. So strength now starts to become a little bit more important. So that sliding scale that I was talking about before, you're starting to see from, let's hypothetically say, at a 20 to 25% importance at your everyday athlete, we're starting to slide it up to, okay, well, this is starting to get a lot more important now. If you haven't got the capacity to move a 60 kilo barbell, you're going to fall behind really quickly in an intermediate level. So it starts to slide up the scale a little bit more as you advance in your athletic career or your endeavor. So even further, when you get to the elite level, it just starts to become more important. And then it's kind of when you get to I would say when you get to the games level, obviously that's going to be the peak, but there would still be a jump between the semi-final level to the games level. So you've got to have a certain amount of strength capacity at your semi-finals level, which isn't going to be quite enough at the games level still. So there's layers on top of that as well.
Yeah. I would say now this is where we might differ a bit. And obviously there's a way to prove me wrong already based on what we just saw in the last games with the 1RM event. But I would say a 1 rep max strength is not as important at the games level as it is at semi-final, quarters and semi-finals. Only because in the games we typically see that there is a strength event, but there's most of the time now a lot of the events are strength endurance. So you might have a 1 rep max, but if you can't cycle, and we've spoken about this outside of podcasts and everything, if you can't cycle 80-85% of your strength, then there's no point in having such a big max.
But would you say that would more come down to the scoring structure? So let's look at quarterfinals, for example. There were 5 events. So if you've got a 1 rep max in those 5 events, that 1 rep max is now 20% of your overall score. Whereas when you're at the games, when you get to the games, that event only accounts for, they had 13 events over the games this year. So that is a very small percentage. I'm not that quick at maths. Quick maths,
No.
it's 8% of
That was
your.
actually pretty close.
Yeah, I know. I'm not that. Anyway, so that is 8% of your total scoring for the weekend. Given,
and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The importance of it is that, it goes from a 20% importance, if we use those numbers, to 8% as importance. Now, that 8% might screw you up. Like, you might come dead last. I get that. But if you've already made it to the games, you're probably pretty damn strong already. I'm just going to assume that.
Well, let's look at BKG.
Yeah.
He lifted the 40 kilo bar for both
Minimum
the snatch
requirement.
and for the clean and jerk. Was it clean and jerk, or was it just clean?
No, clean and jerk.
Clean and jerk, yeah. So he came dead last in that, and he still finished. He just slipped outside the top 10, and I think that was why. But he was still there for the final day.
Yeah.
And so
Can I just say, the effort that he put into that jerk at 43 kilos.
Can you imagine if he missed it?
Was phenomenal. At least he put on a show with the barbell that he was using.
Yeah. But yeah, so then there's a sliding scale that goes up to when you, depending where you are in your in your season, sorry. Mm-hmm. And then the relevance for your top end strength becomes less relevant when you get to that games level, and to some extent the semi-finals level. But you still have to be strong enough to be able to get to compete. Because if you haven't got X amount at the quarterfinals level, because it's 20% of your score, typically, because you're going to see strength events across pretty much it might not be for a 1 rep max, but it'll be very, very close, or it'll be at a high percentage of your 1 rep max. So you still need to be strong enough to qualify to get you to that semi-finals level, and then it's a little bit less relevant, but it's still extremely important. So, yeah.
So I like that if we looked at the minimum, so let's just say the open, let's actually change it that 43 is definitely the bare minimum, or 29, but I would say 61 kilos and 43 kilos is the minimum now. We saw that in the very first event of the open.
Yeah.
And it was for 30 reps? That's a pretty...
Was it?
Yeah, remember it was 50 cal row, or 60 cal row, 50 toes to bar, 40 wall balls, 30 power cleans, 20 muscle ups. And so you've got to be able to do that, because everyone was getting to the bar, but you could see the people that could handle the barbell would just they would just take away. And then you get to the ring muscle ups, which is then that separated people more. But you had to get to the rings first, which a lot of people got caught up not even getting to the rings.
Yeah.
Would you say, I didn't do the individuals for the quarters, would you say the 84, or would you say the 124 kilos is the minimum?
I would say...
That's a huge jump.
It's a massive jump.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, because I feel like CrossFit is kind of going away from having so much emphasis on barbell cycling.
Yeah, we spoke about this, yes.
So if you look at, 5 years ago, you used to do thrust to double under couplets, and you used to do overhead squats, and your barbell cycling was such a staple in CrossFit programming, especially for the open and the competition side of things. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we're starting to step away from that a little bit. We're starting to do more odd object stuff, and a little bit more gymnastics specific stuff, which is cool. I personally, I'm not a massive fan. I prefer the barbell cycling. I like that sort of stuff.
I was like, you don't think that's cool?
No. I think it's...
Love a barbell.
I do love a barbell. I think it's cool that we're not just going to be stuck in the same realm for the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. We're mixing it up, which is what the whole methodology of CrossFit is, right? So that being said, I do feel like we're moving away from having that heavy of an emphasis on barbell cycling. But my argument to that would be that the benefits that you get from having that capacity, you're not going to be able to replicate with other things anywhere near as easily. So even if they don't come up in a competition setting, I think having that in your chest of tools, I guess.
Repertoire.
Your repertoire, good choice of words there. That would be, like, I don't think there's anything that's going to be able to replace having the capacity for barbell cycling. So, to answer your question, long walk for a short drink, I don't think 124 is going to be the bare minimum anymore. I think it would be, you need to be able to do a certain amount of reps at that sort of weight. It might not be, so what was it? It was 5-4-3-2-1 with 5-4-3-2-1 box jump overs.
Yeah, at 30-inch.
So it's, if you look at the reps, it's not a lot of reps to get done at 124. I would more put emphasis on being able to do 3 reps at that, but then being able to cycle 100 better.
Yeah.
So, but even that is at the, I would say, if you're making quarterfinals, you're either at, depending on where you're sitting at that level, you're either knocking on the door of an RX level, and there might be a couple of things that you're still working on, ring muscle ups, for example, if you haven't got them, but you've got the strength. You're either knocking on the door of being an RX athlete, or you're at the top sort of end of being an intermediate athlete. Mm-hmm. So strength starts to become a lot more important. So I would argue that, being able to cycle 100 kilos is going to be more beneficial, like you said before, being able to cycle a higher percentage of your 1 rep as opposed to having a high 1 rep is going to be more beneficial. Because if you can hypothetically, you can hit 130 for your 1 rep, but then hitting 120 for 3 is going to absolutely destroy you. You're not going to have the capacity. So I would be more putting emphasis on radio, where you can hit 125 for 1 rep, but let's get really, really efficient at moving 100 kilos for reps, as opposed to trying to increase. Because by default, you'll end up increasing your strength and your 1 reps will go up, but I think you're going to benefit more from the barbell cycling aspect.
I also think
I feel like I just rambled on massively there.
I think you got to your point.
I apologise.
Well, guys, this never happened, so let's just enjoy this moment of apologising. Is that, and it goes back to the everyday athlete as well. Instead of being like, all right, I'm going to push my 1 rep max up as much as I can, which requires a lot of hard training. And I don't think people understand, unless you're in the beginner phase of your journey, it's a grind to get your weights to go up, and it should be.
Yeah.
When you see people lifting big weights and everything, and they've done it clean, it's almost like an honor to watch them, because how hard they've had to work for that. Yeah. So when you are looking at, okay, I've got a 130 clean and jerk, but I want to push it to a 133 to 135 or even a 140, if you can hit the 100 kilos a lot more, you're probably at less risk of injury. That's a huge thing. So longevity in the sport is going to help you. And that skill of barbell cycling conditioning is going to be huge as well. And like you said, your lifts are still going to go up anyway, because you're spending time on attention in that barbell. And I think that's a big thing why CrossFit has kind of proven a lot of old school strength and conditioning methodologies wrong, is because they're like, we lift heavy weights and as heavy as we can, max effort, and it's great. And CrossFit's just lifting lighter weights with semi-great technique, but for 30 reps. But the time on attention is huge. We have more or greater time on attention, which is evidently shown in absolutely every single peer-reviewed journal, bro science journal, whatever kind of journal, podcasts, news articles, probably never in the news articles. Yeah. That time on attention is what increases or forces adaptation in the muscles to grow, or to become stronger. So, good on CrossFit.
Because there are so many different mechanisms to build strength, right? Mm-hmm. You can look at it as simplistically. You look at it as time under tension. You can look at it total load lifted. You can look at the speed that you're lifting the weight. There's so many different things that you can attack. Let's take a squat, for example. You can improve your squat through so many different mechanisms. CrossFit by default attacks so many of those different mechanisms. So you look at the speed element, you could look at wall balls or like a body weight squat. If you look at the strength adaptations, you'd look at, all right, we're going to do a 5x5 back squat today. So you're looking at heavy weight for low reps. And then you go, rightio, we're going to do another speed one would be like your thrusters. That's a really explosive sort of movement. But then if you've got, let's take front squats in the middle of a workout, you're looking at, that's a moderate weight that you're moving at high repetitions, so the time under tension element's getting attacked there. So by default, with CrossFit looking at so many different movement patterns that essentially work on the same movement pattern, you put yourself in a position where you're by default going to increase your strength on all of the different mechanisms.
Yeah.
Which is why it works.
I totally thought you were going to just like talk about like, so let's just say you've got thrusters, or let's say you've got squat cleans, and at the start you're working on your speed because you're moving really, really fast, and then when you start to get tired, you start slowing down, so then you start doing tempo squat cleans, and then by the end you're doing pause squat cleans, and so you're hitting all of them within one workout because you're dying.
Not quite.
Yeah, I was like, well, I experience that daily. So. Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think it shows the importance of strength. What's your opinion, just before we close up, your opinion on being too strong? I know this came up probably a couple of years ago. People were talking about it, like you could be too strong for CrossFit. And I never really saw a consensus of where anyone actually sat. Like everyone was like, you know what?
I've got a person that I would just use as an example.
Do not talk about yourself. Okay.
How would I have ever been too strong?
That's why I was saying don't talk about yourself.
No, I haven't. I haven't ever won a strength event ever. But
really?
No,
well, neither have I. So
I don't think I ever would, and if I did, I would put it down to either nobody turned up for the competition, or the training's been way out of balance. But back to what I was saying, Jake Douglas is a perfect example. He still is, but he was super strong, and it was at the end of last season, pretty much straight away, he was like, no, I need to, what do you call it? Like Project Fat Boy to Fit Boy? Or something to that extent.
I don't even know if I follow him.
I do. He ended up changed his focus completely to endurance based because that was where he was in his season, and then it was just a fitness. Pretty much that's all he focused on. The emphasis was just being on work capacity. I need to be able to work fast, work hard, work for a long time frame, and be able to go because he had the strength. Because strength takes years to develop. Like, you're not going to go from 100 kilo clean, like Jono said, unless you're new to the sport and you've already got some level of strength. You're typically not going to go from 100 kilo clean to 150 kilo clean in a year without some sort of assistance. But fitness, you can go from a 10-minute mile to a 7-minute mile within a year. So fitness can be developed very, very quickly in comparison to strength, but strength is something that you have to chip away at consistently for a long time to get the benefits from. So that's why typically it takes a long time for people to go from a beginner level to an intermediate level to an RX to an elite to a competitive level. But that's why people put so much emphasis on strength, especially in the off season. But depending where you are in your athletic career, you either need to put more time into the barbell to get stronger so that way you can compete competitively at an RX level. But then when you get to that RX level and you can lift your weights, everybody else is still going to keep increasing their 1 rep maxes, and the marker still keeps moving. Everyone increases roughly by that 5 to 10% each year on year on year. So if you look at CrossFit 5 years ago, there was nobody that was snatching 300 pounds. Now you look at the Rogue Invitationals, or it was one of the events. I can't remember which one it was. Was it? No, it wasn't last year's semi-finals.
Are you talking about the Mid-Atlantic where Jason Hopper did 310?
No, there was like 6 people that hit 300 pounds.
Yeah, Ben Smith hit 300. Medeiros hit like 285. Panchek hit 300. Yeah, I think it was that one where Jason Hopper came up on the scenes.
But 5 years ago, if anyone hit 300 pounds, you're like, oh my God, and they were miles ahead of everybody. Now it's becoming more of a common number to hit. So it just goes to show that even the guys at the elite level, they're still incrementally getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. They're also getting fitter and fitter and fitter. So for the guys that are chasing them, they need to be getting 15 to 20% stronger year on year to close that gap.
Yep.
But for the guys that are at an earlier stage, they need to be getting 30 to 40% stronger to close the gap on the guys that are already closing the gap. So the emphasis on getting stronger is way higher in the early stages of your competitive career. And then as you start to close the gap, the importance of increasing your strength is less, but the importance of being able to cycle the barbell, I would say, goes up.
Cool. Oh, wow, we do agree. That's insane. We probably don't approach this the same way, though.
No,
we should
probably
talk
not.
about that another time. No, I would agree. I think it depends on your goals as well, whether you are an everyday athlete or whether you're a beginner, intermediate, RX, or an elite athlete. I think it depends on, am I strong enough? Because strength unlocks, that's like the key to unlock the door to have the privilege to compete at that level. I would say, and once you have the key to do that and go through that door, then you open it up to skills, you open it up to endurance, you open up to adaptability. But I would say if you're too strong, like if you're in an intermediate and you're snatching 120, you probably shouldn't be an intermediate unless you can't do a pull-up.
Or a handstand push-up.
Then you're probably too strong for where you're at. And that would class you as too strong. You need to focus on something else. Like Jake Douglas, 175 clean and jerk. I mean, he's not too strong because it's cool to see, but he noticed that he was too strong for his other abilities, and so he focused on
where he was. And that brings it back to that being a well-rounded athlete. So if you've got all the different aspects of fitness within here, but then you're really, really strong out there, but then you're also really shit at gymnastics stuff, you need to bring the strength down slightly, and then you need to build out the capacity with your gymnastics stuff.
Guys, if you're not watching the video,
there. That
was a great visual.
Yeah. But yeah, so it just depends where you are in your competitive journey, I guess. But I also think that the way that CrossFit is going, the programming, and whether Dave Castro takes back over or not, who knows. But if Bosman is in control for another year of the CrossFit season, I think you're going to see more of an emphasis on gymnastic skills being that barrier to entry now. So whereas typically you would see, you have to be strong enough to be able to compete, I think you're going to be seeing more, you have to have X amount of skill to be able to compete now. So like you take your crossovers, for example, and then you've got handstand pirouettes, and you've got so if you haven't got the skill to play with the big boys, then I think that we're starting to see a little bit of a transition into strength is still very, very, very relevant, don't get me wrong, but I think that your entry to the competitive field may shift towards more skill-based.
And I think he said too much, because that's what we will discuss in the next episode. I'm like, stop it. Stop it.
You're giving away too much.
We will do an episode on the ways that we have within our own careers, but also the ways that we coach our clients and the ways that we've learnt to build strength. So stay tuned for that, because I think while this introduces where you should be measuring yourself on, building up to measure yourself of where you want to get to will be very interesting as well. And that's where we will kind of nerd out a little bit more, or geek out about this, because it's fun. It's fun to geek out about building strength, capacity, and all that stuff.
All right.
Thank you guys for listening.
We'll leave it there. Catch you in the next episode.
As always, when KPow says it.
I forgot.
If you have any questions, drop them into our Instagram, gains.and.giggles. DM us, comment on one of the 1,000 posts that we have been putting up lately. Thanks to KPow, the man. YouTube, Spotify, or even just if you know us, just private message us as well. We'd love it. Thank you again for listening, guys. Keep up the training.
See you next time.
Or just watch the CrossFit Games and pretend.